3 years. 1,089 days since my son Ryan died. They said it was an accident. A fall down the stairs in the very house he'd fixed with his own hands. I believed it. I forced myself to believe it. Until this morning. I was out watering the plants when I saw Vanessa, my daughter-in-law. She stepped out of the garage holding something that made my chest drop. A mint green ball of yarn edged in white. The blanket I had knitted for Sophie, my granddaughter. She didn't look around, not once, no hesitation. Vanessa lifted the trash can lid and tossed the blanket in. A dry final thud when the lid slammed shut. Then she turned and walked away, hair loose in the morning breeze, moving with a casualness that made my skin crawl. I stood, frozen. Number. I couldn't make sense of it. That blanket was the last thing I had left of Ryan. I had knit it for 3 weeks, stitch by stitch, listening to him talk about his dream of becoming a father. And now it was in the trash. I crossed the street without thinking, didn't bother with shoes, didn't watch for cars. I lifted the lid. Soap and rot and the metallic tang of rust hit me. I rooted through bag after bag, crumpled paper, beer cans, empty milk cartons. Then I found it, the little blanket. Mint green, white edge, one corner smeared with the faint lipstick stain. Still soft, still carrying the faint scent of Sophie's baby shampoo. I pulled it out and dust swirled in the sunlight. I hugged it to my chest. For a moment, it felt like holding my son again. Vanessa didn't see me. She'd gone inside and shut the door as if nothing had happened. Walking back, my hands trembled uncontrollably. I asked myself, why would she do this? Why throw away the only thing that tied me to Ryan? I laid the blanket on the bed. The room was quiet, except for the ticking of the clock. I smoothed the stitches. Light from the window caught the yarn. The mint had faded, but every stitch was intact. Then my fingers hit something raised in the middle, hard, cold. I frowned. It couldn't be stuffing. I know every stitch I've ever made. There was something inside. I went to the kitchen, opened the drawer, and found my old scissors. My hands shook, but I cut. Snip, snip, snip. The sound bounced through the house like a heartbeat. I reached the second layer of stuffing. The scissor blade struck something solid. I slipped my hand in and pulled it out. A phone, small, black, old. Its screen cracked at the corner. Dust caked its edges. A thread of yarn clung to it. I stood there, stunned. A phone inside my granddaughter's blanket? Not mine, not Ryan's, not a toy. I plugged it in. The screen flickered. Logo, then life. No lock code. Gallery, messages, notes, videos. I tapped gallery. The first picture, Vanessa, candlelight, a perfect smile. Her face lit up. The man sitting beside her was not Ryan. Brown hair, sun-tanned skin. He had his arm around her waist, smiling too intimately. The timestamp said 3.5 years ago, back when Ryan was still alive. I swiped. There were pictures of them at a lake, in a car, in a hotel room. My stomach dropped. This was more than betrayal. It was evidence of a conspiracy. I went back and opened messages, a thread between V and C. Vanessa, I can't take this anymore. C. Calm down, he'll suspect. Vanessa, I want to be with you. C. He won't let you go. Vanessa, then we have to find another way. My throat went dry. Then the last line flashed up. I need him to disappear. I let the phone fall into the blanket. The air in the room thickened. Wind whispered through the window crack. I looked up at Ryan's photo on the wall, him smiling, holding Sophie in his arms. I remembered that morning. He'd said, "Mom, I'll teach her to look at the world with good eyes." Something squeezed my chest. Ryan believed he had everything. He didn't know the person sleeping beside him was plotting to kill him. I stared at the phone on the bed. It lay there quiet, a small, ordinary rectangle, but inside it was a doorway to hell. Vanessa hid it in the blanket. Then she threw the blanket away this morning. She must have thought no one saw, that no one would find it, that no one would know. But I saw. I walked to the window. Across the street, Vanessa's house glowed. Sophie was probably asleep. Vanessa, maybe she was on the sofa, drinking wine, laughing with someone over the phone. Golden light spilled through her curtains, smoothing her face into a peaceful, polished mask. I whispered, "Ryan, if you can hear me, lead me to the truth. I won't leave her be." The wind picked up and the curtain fluttered. The blanket lay there mint, soft, seemingly harmless, but now it was proof. I ran my hand along the cut edge where I had opened it. The yarn frayed, a raw wound that hadn't had time to close. Like me. I didn't know if I was opening a path to justice or stepping straight into an abyss. I only knew that from that moment on, everything I had believed had died with Ryan. I never imagined a small phone, hidden inside a tiny blanket, could expose everything, or that the woman I once called my daughter-in-law would turn out to be the one who killed my son. I didn't sleep that night. The phone sat on the table plugged in, its dim light flickering like an eye waiting to open. At 3 a.m, I made coffee. Outside, mist rolled in and wind whistled through the pine trees behind the house. In the dark, the only sounds were the ticking clock and my heartbeat. 3 years ago. I remember every minute of that day, the day Ryan died. It was a Tuesday afternoon in September. The Oregon sky was heavy, gray with clouds. My phone rang. Vanessa was on the line. She was screaming, crying, her voice broken and wild. "Eleanor, Ryan fell down the stairs. He's not waking up. Oh God, he's not breathing." The glass slipped from my hand. I ran to my car, no purse, no shoes. 15 minutes later, I reached the hospital. The ER doors were wide open. The smell of disinfectant, hurried footsteps, the chaos of panic. Vanessa sat there in a pearl gray dress, head in her hands, sobbing hard. Blood stained her sleeve. When she saw me, she jumped up and hugged me. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened. He just slipped." I pushed her away and ran to the nurse's station. A doctor came out, face grim. I knew that look. I'd seen it before when my husband passed. We did everything we could. My knees gave out. The world collapsed. Ryan, my only child, my pride, my heartbeat, was gone. Severe head trauma, they said. Nothing could be done. I screamed, but my voice disappeared under the sound of machines and footsteps. Vanessa held me, tears soaking my shoulder. "He'd want us to be strong, Mom." He hated seeing people suffer. I nodded, but inside I was empty. Everything had turned to fog. The funeral came 2 days later. Rain, wind, pine needles falling across the wooden coffin. Vanessa wore a long black dress, her face perfect, every tear falling on cue. She held my hand in front of everyone. "Mom, he was my whole world." That sentence, now, it chills me. Because 3 years later, those same hands threw away her daughter's blanket and hid a phone inside it. A phone full of sin. Ryan was a doctor, a good man, always smiling, always caring, always working late. He didn't drink, didn't owe money, never fought with his wife. That accident had been wrong from the start. I remembered the house that day, the white 2-story on the south side of Bend, the oak staircase polished clean. No blood anywhere, just a small crack on the 6th step. Police said he might have slipped while wearing socks, but Ryan never wore socks in the house. He hated the feeling. He'd told me that. A tiny detail I'd dismissed then, but now it echoed in my mind like a bell. Sophie was only 6 months old when her father died. Vanessa said she was exhausted all the time. I took care of Sophie most days while Vanessa worked night shifts at the hospital. I remember the night before Ryan died. He called me, tired but cheerful. "Mom, I'm taking some time off. I want to take Vanessa and Sophie to the beach. She's been distant lately, but I think she just needs time." That was the last call. Now the phone lay on my table, screen still on. The final messages between Vanessa and the man were still there. "Everything will look like an accident. He'll die naturally. No one will ever know." And the last one froze my blood. "After this, we'll be free. Free. Free by killing the man who loved her." I opened Ryan's number in my contacts. Even though I knew, I still pressed call, just to hear the operator say, "The number you've dialed no longer exists." I broke down, sobbing. For the first time in 3 years, I truly cried. The next morning, I went to Vanessa's house. Sophie was playing in the living room, giggling when she saw me. Vanessa opened the door, surprise flashing in her eyes before she forced a smile. "Oh, you're early, Mom." I smiled back, pretending calm. "I brought a few of Ryan's things. He'd want Sophie to have them when she grows up." She nodded quickly, avoiding my eyes. "I have to head to work now. Can you watch Sophie? Her milk's in the fridge." When the door shut, I looked around. Everything was spotless, too spotless. On the table sat their wedding photo. Ryan smiling, Vanessa staring straight at the camera, but now all I saw was deceit. I picked Sophie up. She touched my face, innocent, trusting. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "I promise, baby, I'll protect you, no matter what." That night, I called Margaret, my neighbor for 20 years, the one who always listened. I told her everything, the blanket, the phone, the messages. She was silent for a long time. "Eleanor, you need to go to the police." I shook my head. "They won't believe me. She's a nurse, well-liked at the hospital. Who's going to believe a 69-year-old woman saying her daughter-in-law killed her son?" Margaret sighed. "Then gather more proof. Keep the phone, don't tell anyone, and be careful around her." I nodded. She was right. I spent the entire night reading through every message on that phone. Hundreds of lines, dozens of photos, even short videos. Vanessa laughing, dancing, kissing a man named Carter. Then one message appeared, not to Carter, but to an unknown number. "The insurance papers are ready." There was an attachment, a photo of a life insurance policy. Ryan Stone, beneficiary, Vanessa Stone, $500,000, date signed, 1 month before Ryan's death. My heart clenched. I looked at Ryan's signature at the bottom, familiar, neat, but something was off. I zoomed in. The signature was doubled. 2 different end strokes. It wasn't his handwriting. The truth hit me hard. Vanessa had forged it. I printed everything from the phone, photos, messages, documents. I sealed them in an envelope and locked it in my wooden cabinet, right beside my wedding picture. Before bed, I opened the window and looked across the street. Vanessa's house was glowing. Her shadow moved behind the curtains, wine glass in hand, smiling. She thought she was safe. She didn't know. The game had just begun. That night, I heard the rain fall. I closed my eyes and saw Ryan, his eyes full of light. "Mom, don't be afraid. The truth finds its way to the light." I woke up in the middle of the night, the lamp still on, the phone still lying there, silent. I placed my hand over it and whispered, "Tomorrow, my son. Tomorrow I begin." I was no longer a grieving mother. I was the woman who would bring justice for her son. I remember the first time Ryan brought Vanessa home. It was a Sunday afternoon. The Oregon sky impossibly blue. The house filled with the smell of apple pie. Ryan knocked on the door, smiling like a 16-year-old again. "Mom, I want you to meet someone special." I wiped my hands and stepped out to the porch. And then I saw her. Vanessa. She stood there in a cream-colored dress, blonde hair tied neatly, a bright smile that looked almost painted on. Her steps were light, her voice soft, sweet in a way that didn't feel real. "Hello, Mrs. Stone. I'm Vanessa. I work with Ryan at the hospital." I smiled, shook her hand, tried to feel warmth. But her skin was cold. No tremor, no nervousness, just cold. Ryan's eyes that day, I still remember them. The eyes of a man who believed he had found forever. He couldn't stop looking at her. Every gesture, every word from her made him laugh. She's amazing, Mom. Smart. Kind. I think she's the one. I nodded. I wanted to believe him. A widow only wants one thing, her child's happiness. Their wedding came that fall. The sun over Bend was golden, the ground covered in leaves. It was small, elegant, perfect. I sat in the front row and watched Ryan. Gray suit, proud smile. Vanessa followed him, bouquet of white roses in her hands. Every step, every glance, every smile. Too perfect. When the pastor asked if she would take him as her husband, she didn't cry. Her voice was steady. And when Ryan said, "I do," his voice trembled with love. Vanessa just smiled, lips quivering like someone remembering her lines. Back then, I told myself I was just being paranoid. But now I see, every detail was a sign. She didn't love my son. She loved the plan. They moved into a 2-story white house in South Bend, the house where Ryan would later die. Lavender in the front yard, a polished oak staircase, curtains always perfectly straight. Ryan built the porch swing, repainted the shutters, planted an apple tree for the kids someday. Vanessa watched from the steps, always smiling. That perfect smile, always in the right place, at the right time, never changing. A year later, she was pregnant. Ryan called me almost every day. "Mom, she's glowing." I've never seen her so happy. She eats healthy, reads parenting books all day. I visited one afternoon with soup and yarn. Vanessa sat on the sofa, one hand resting on her belly. Light poured through the window, turning her hair to gold. "Don't worry, Mom," she said sweetly. "Ryan and I both work in medicine. We know what to do." Her words were soft as honey, but her eyes stayed empty. I nodded, smiled, and drove home. But in the car, I couldn't shake the feeling. Something about her made the air cold. When Sophie was born, Ryan called me at midnight, his voice trembling with joy. "Mom!" "She has your eyes." I didn't know I could love someone this much. I cried in the dark and drove to the hospital at dawn. Vanessa looked tired but flawless, a kind of beauty too sharp to be human. She smiled. "Would you like to hold her?" I held Sophie, warm, tiny, the smell of milk and new life. I knitted her a blanket that night, mint green, white trim, the same one I would later find in the trash. Ryan kissed my forehead. His eyes glistened. "Mom, I owe you my whole life." If I had known those were his last words of happiness, I would have held him longer. In the months that followed, Vanessa changed. She smiled less, slept alone, went out more. Told Ryan it was night shifts and emergency calls. Ryan phoned me. "Mom, she's distant." I think she's tired, but sometimes I feel like she's already gone. I told him to be patient. She just had a baby. Be kind. She needs time. He listened. But love can't save someone whose heart is already elsewhere. One night, I dropped by without warning. The house was dark. Vanessa's car was gone. Ryan was on the sofa with Sophie asleep in his arms, face pale, eyes dim. "Is she on duty?" I asked. He nodded. "Yeah, but one of her coworkers said she wasn't scheduled tonight." I gripped the arm of the chair, but I said nothing because in his eyes I saw it. That fragile hope that she still loved him. 2 weeks later, Ryan was dead. The police said he fell. Vanessa said he slipped. And I watched her cry too perfectly to believe. She wore black, stood by the coffin, dabbing her eyes with a white handkerchief. Every move measured, every gesture rehearsed. When guests offered condolences, she bowed her head just right. When someone said Ryan's name, she bit her lip as if she'd practiced it. A woman performing grief. At the cemetery, Margaret whispered beside me, "She cries like she's being watched." I turned. Vanessa held Sophie in her arms, a single tear down one cheek, the other side dry as dust. 3 years later, when I found the phone in the blanket, every piece fell into place. The perfect wedding, the perfect smile, the late-night shifts, the distance, the lies. Everything had been a script, a marriage built not on love, but on calculation, a plan to kill. I looked at their wedding photo on my table. Vanessa in white, Ryan in gray, the Bend sun blazing behind them. I touched the glass. It was cold, just like her handshake that first day. That night, I couldn't sleep. I opened the old wooden box and pulled out their photo album. From wedding to Sophie's birth, page by page, Vanessa's smile never changed. Same curve, same perfection, same emptiness. Ryan's eyes, though, told another story. Bright, then worried, then haunted. He knew. Somewhere deep down, he knew. I set the photos down, my hands trembling. "Mom will do what you couldn't," I whispered. Outside across the street, Vanessa's bedroom light glowed softly. She was probably sleeping in the same bed Ryan had once laid in. But I wasn't afraid of her anymore, only of the truth, because I knew it might be far worse than anything I could imagine. 3 weeks had passed since the night I found the phone inside the blanket. 3 weeks of silence, of slow footsteps and watchful eyes behind the curtain. I hadn't told anyone, not Margaret, not the police, and certainly not Vanessa. I needed time to watch, to listen, to be sure. At first, I tried to keep things the same. Phone calls, visits, bringing Sophie apple pie and asking how she'd been. But Vanessa began to avoid me. She stopped answering the door, or she'd open it just an inch, enough for me to see half her face in that polite smile. "Sorry, Mom, I'm busy today." Sophie's sleeping. Her voice was soft as mist, but behind her I could hear the TV playing, the clinking of glasses, and a man's deep voice, one I didn't recognize. I walked home heavy-footed, one thought echoing in my head. Who was in there with her? A few nights later, I decided to take a walk through the neighborhood. The Bend sky was dark blue, the streetlights spilling gold across the road. I stopped by Vanessa's fence. The curtain in her living room was half closed. Through the gap, I saw her sitting on the couch, phone in hand, smiling. Not the smile of a tired single mother, the smile of a woman in love. Then a shadow crossed behind her. A man, brown hair. I only saw the sleeve of a leather jacket, but my heart dropped. Carter. I turned away, pulse hammering, hands cold. I hurried home, every step a question. If Carter was living there, then who was raising Sophie? A killer. And his accomplice. The next morning, I went to see Margaret. She was planting lavender by her porch. I told her everything I'd seen. She frowned. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure. I saw him, inside Ryan's house." She sighed, wiping her hands on her apron. "Eleanor, you're playing with fire." "But I might be able to help." I looked at her. "How?" "I've got a friend at Bend Community Bank. If you want to know if someone's been sending her money, I can ask." I took her hands. "Margaret, you're an angel." 3 days later, she came back with a brown envelope. Inside were copies of Vanessa's bank statements. I spread them out across the table. Rows of transactions. And then one that stole my breath. $48,000. Transferred to Carter M. right after Ryan's insurance payout. I crumpled the paper in my hand. All this time, she'd told me she was struggling, barely affording daycare, living paycheck to paycheck. But this was the truth. She was living off my son's death. I printed the records and sealed them in a new envelope. locked it in my wardrobe. Every time I opened that door, I saw Ryan's eyes in those numbers, proof of her guilt. One evening, while I was tending the garden, Vanessa came over. She brought a plate of cookies, smiling softly. "Mom, I'm sorry I've been so busy. The hospital's been chaos lately." I smiled back, meeting her eyes. "It's all right. I just wanted to make sure Sophie's okay." "Of course," she said. "She's perfectly fine." Then she turned to leave, light steps, but I noticed her hand tremble slightly as she set the plate down. She knew. She knew I was watching. She knew I suspected. That night, I received an anonymous email. No sender, no subject line, just one sentence. "Stop digging, or you'll end up like him." I read it 10 times. The blood in my veins turned to ice. I locked the doors, pulled the curtains. Outside, the wind hissed through the trees, and I could swear I heard footsteps on the porch. I clutched the phone in my hands. "Ryan," I whispered, "I'm not stopping. Even if they kill me." The next morning, I saw Carter's truck pulling out of Vanessa's driveway, a black pickup with a blurred license plate. He wore a long coat, cigarette in hand. When he drove past me, his eyes flicked toward mine, cold, hollow, and knowing. I stepped back, my heart pounding. He smirked. Then the truck disappeared around the corner. He wasn't just visiting, he was living there. That afternoon, I saw Sophie playing in the yard. Her laughter floated through the air, her brown hair flying, Ryan's eyes shining in her face. I wanted to run to her, to hold her. But Vanessa stepped outside, scooped her up, and went back in. No words, no glance, just the sound of the door locking. Click. The distance between us had become a wall. That night, Margaret called. "Eleanor, I think you should go to the police. At least ask them to recheck the insurance records." I stayed silent. "I will," I said finally, "but not yet. I need more proof, something they can't deny." Margaret hesitated. "Do you even know who you're up against?" "Yes," I said quietly. "The woman who killed my son. And I won't let her kill again." The days after, I began to watch her. I wrote down the time she left the house, the time she came home, which night she claimed to work. I found holes, shifts that didn't exist. On those nights, Carter's truck was always there. Once, I followed him. He drove through downtown Bend and turned onto the dark road by Mirror Pond. I stopped at a distance. He parked and waited. Minutes later, another car pulled up. Vanessa stepped out. They kissed. Long, slow, unashamed. I recorded it on my phone. The first real proof. My hands shook, but I held the camera steady. When they left, I sat in my car for a long time. The lake wind was knife-sharp, cutting through my skin. I felt 10 years older by sunrise. The next morning, Vanessa called. "Mom, I heard someone saw you at Mirror Pond last night." I froze. "I like the view," I said. She laughed lightly. "I hope that's all it was." Her voice was polite, calm, and laced with threat. That night, I installed a small camera on my porch, hidden inside a flower pot. If they came for me, I'd have the truth recorded. The next day, I found a package on my doorstep. No name, no return address. Inside, just a single sheet of paper. "It's not over yet." And beneath it, a lipstick stain, the same color as the mark I'd seen on the blanket. I sat down, paper trembling in my hands. The house was silent. The wind stopped. Even the clock seemed to pause. I understood then. She knew I had seen. The silence between us was over. I looked out the window. Vanessa's house glowed across the street. Sophie was in there, inside a home full of secrets she couldn't see. And I whispered, if someone has to be silent, it won't be me. Top of form. That morning, Bend felt colder than usual. The fog was so thick, I had to turn on my headlights, even though it was only 8 a.m. The air smelled damp, metallic, like something about to explode. I made coffee, but my hands wouldn't stop shaking. The security camera had caught movement during the night, a figure standing by the fence. Still, for nearly 10 minutes, not coming closer, not walking away, just watching. I zoomed in. The lighting was faint, but the outline of her face was clear enough. Vanessa. Fear didn't come, only anger, deep, sharp, solid as stone, rising through me until it drove me to my feet. I grabbed the envelope of evidence, shoved it into my coat pocket, and walked straight out, across the damp road, across that invisible line between our houses, straight to hers. The garage door was open. Vanessa was backing her car out, hair tied high, white coat, that same frozen smile. "Up early, Mom? Something wrong?" Her voice was smoke, soft but cutting. I stood in her driveway, unmoving. "I need to ask you something." "Of course." She tilted her head, smiling faintly. "What could possibly be that serious?" I reached into the bag and pulled out the mint green blanket. Her expression froze. Just for half a second, but I saw it, that flicker of recognition. "Why did you throw this away?" I asked. "Oh, that old thing? Sophie's got plenty of new ones." Her tone stayed calm, but her hand tightened around her purse strap. "Old?" I stepped closer. "Or because you were afraid someone might find what was inside?" The smile faltered. Her lips pressed tight. A cold wind swept through the space between us, carrying the scent of wet asphalt. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said. "The phone," I whispered. "The one inside the blanket." She lifted her head slowly. Her eyes changed. Surprise, then caution, then pure frost. "You found it?" "Yes, and the messages, the photos, the transfers." For a moment, her face went white. Then the smile returned, thin, precise, fake. "You should rest, Eleanor. You've been through a lot. Losing Ryan must have been hard. Don't let grief make you imagine things." "Imagine?" I laughed bitterly. "Did I imagine the forged signature on the insurance papers, too?" She stepped closer. The cold perfume she wore flooded the space between us. "You're saying dangerous things," she whispered. "And you," I said, "did dangerous things." For a long moment we stared at each other. A mother who had lost her son. A woman who had lost her soul. She turned away first, her voice low, steady. "Sometimes it's better to forget the past, Mom. It only hurts." "I can't forget," I said, "because my past has a body." She stopped, took a slow breath, then smiled. "If you really believe all that, maybe you should go to the police. But remember, they ruled it an accident." "And I have proof," I said. She shrugged. "Then go ahead." Her car door slammed. The engine roared. Mud splattered across my shoes as her silver SUV sped off. I stood there in the driveway, heart pounding. Not afraid anymore, just hollow. And absolutely certain she knew that I knew. That afternoon, I went home, transferred every file from the hidden phone onto a USB drive. I planned to bring it to the police the next morning, but that night, someone knocked on my door. 3 times. Slow. Heavy. I peeked through the curtain. No one there. Only a white envelope on the porch. I picked it up. No name, no address. Inside was a photograph of me, standing in the driveway that morning, facing Vanessa. Someone had been watching, from afar. I flipped it over, on the back in handwriting that made my skin crawl. "Stop, or Sophie will pay." The envelope slipped from my hands. The air around me froze. They knew. They knew I had the evidence, and they were willing to threaten my granddaughter. I called Margaret, my voice shaking. They know, Margaret. They're watching me. They know everything. Calm down. You have to go to the police right now. No, I whispered. If they touch Sophie. Eleanor, she said gently, you can't fight this alone. I said nothing, because she was right, but fear wrapped around my chest like a hand. That night, I turned on every light in the house. Didn't sleep, just watched the window that faced Vanessa's. 10 meters apart, but it felt like a war zone. Around midnight, her lights went out, then flicked back on. She stepped onto the porch, looked straight at me, smiled, a thin, blade-like smile, then turned and closed the door. The next morning my phone rang, a blocked number, a man's rough voice. Stop asking questions, Mrs. Stone. The dead should stay dead. I said nothing. He hung up. My hands trembled, but my mind went still. There was no turning back. If I stayed silent, Ryan would never rest. If I kept going, I could lose Sophie. But the truth had already started breathing. That afternoon, I went back to Vanessa's house. I needed to see Sophie to make sure she was safe. The door opened. Vanessa looked calm as if nothing had happened. Oh, another visit, Mom? I came to see my granddaughter. Of course, she said. Come in. The house was spotless, fragrant with citrus and detergent. But every photo of Ryan was gone. Where their wedding picture had hung, there was now a painting of white flowers, lifeless and cold. Sophie ran to me, laughing, hair smelling of milk. I knelt, kissed her forehead. Behind her, Vanessa smiled. See? She's fine. Yes, I said quietly, scanning the room. It's just a shame Ryan can't see this. Vanessa tilted her head, her voice chilling. Ryan's gone, Mom. You should learn to accept that. And you, I said, should learn to be afraid. Her expression flickered, just for a heartbeat, then the smile returned. I don't know what you're talking about. But you should leave. Sophie needs her nap. I stood there for a long moment, looking at the innocent child, the cold woman, and realizing I was standing inside my son's killer's house. I turned toward the door. Behind me, her voice came soft and sharp. Mom, stop digging. Ryan wouldn't want this. I faced her, eyes like steel. Ryan wanted the truth, and so do I. She smiled, thin and cruel. Sometimes, truth kills, Mom. Then let it, I said. I've already lost everything. You can't scare me anymore. I walked away, the wind slicing my face. Anger and fear burned together, one single flame. I knew what had just happened. I had declared war. No words, no weapons, just eyes. But this was the beginning of the real battle. When I got home, I opened the cabinet, pulled out every piece of evidence and laid it on the table. Then I took an envelope and wrote on it, "If I disappear, open this." I signed my name and locked it away. I don't remember how many hours I slept after that night. Anger and fear thickened in my head like fog. I knew only one thing. If I wanted to end this, I had to go back to where it began. The house where Ryan died. It had been sealed after the investigation. But 3 years had passed. No one cared anymore. The spare key still sat in the little wooden box I kept in my kitchen cabinet. That afternoon I drove over. The street was unnervingly quiet. Gold leaves covered the walkway. Dust filmed the front door. A crooked "For Rent" sign dangled from a stake. I parked. No wind, no birds. Just the heavy silence of memory. The lock clicked. A wave of damp, old paint, and the smell of the past rolled over me. The staircase where Ryan fell was still there, steps polished, no scuffs, no slide marks, not a drop of blood. Accident? Number. Never an accident. I climbed, each board creaking under my feet. Their bedroom closet hung ajar. On the vanity, an empty perfume bottle. Their wedding photo lay face down. I turned it over. The glass was cracked. Ryan smiling, Vanessa smiling. But something was wrong. A dark smear at Ryan's collar, like blood white thin. I set the frame down, drew a breath, and saw it. The attic hatch in the ceiling corner. A wooden ladder leaned against the wall. I didn't remember it being there before. I pulled the ladder down. Dust bloomed into the air. Dry, papery air filled my lungs. The smell of old boxes and older secrets. I climbed, heart drumming. Faint light seeped through a tiny gable window. Low roofline. Rows of cardboard. Ryan once said the attic was just for Christmas bins, but in the far corner sat a clear plastic tote, sealed with brown tape and labeled Family Documents, V. I knelt, dragged it toward me. The lid stuck, then gave. Inside, a tidy stack of files, so clean it was frightening. On top, death certificate. Ryan Stone. Name, birth, date of death, cause, head trauma from domestic fall. The coroner's signature trembled, as if the hand holding the pen wasn't entirely free. I turned the page. Insurance policy, $500,000. Ryan's signature, but not the version I'd seen before. This one was perfect, crisp, and now stamped with a notary seal. Impossible. Not two different final copies for the same policy. I dug deeper. A thinner file, yellowed at the edges. Birth certificate, Sophie Stone. I smiled through sudden tears. Something pure, maybe. Then I read the line for mother. My heart stopped. Mother. Lydia Torres. Not Vanessa. I read it again. Dates matched. St. Charles Medical Center, Bend, Oregon. Signed by the OB Vanessa once worked with. My mind spun. If Vanessa wasn't Sophie's mother, then who was she in this story? I remembered Ryan's late-night calls, the vanishing acts, the emergency shifts, the sudden trips. Had she taken someone else's baby? Hand shaking, I opened another bin. Inside, newborn sweaters, a tiny blanket, and a hospital bracelet. The tag read, Baby Torres, May 22nd. I folded over, sobbing. Sophie wasn't Ryan's biologically, not my blood. But that didn't make me love her less. It only made me more afraid. Because if Vanessa could kill Ryan, she could do anything to this child. A sound below snapped me upright. A door latch. I stopped breathing. Someone had come inside. I killed the flashlight and went still. Footsteps, slow, heavy, moved beneath the stairs. Paused, moved again. Eleanor? A woman's voice. Vanessa. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. She couldn't know I was up here. She couldn't. The stairs creaked. 1 step, 2. I slid behind the tote, clutching the file to my chest. Her silhouette crossed the slice of light below. Blonde hair, black coat. She lifted her chin, eyes narrowing toward the hatch. I know you like your memories, she said softly, but this isn't your house anymore. Her tone was light, edged with mockery. I bit my lip and said nothing. One breath too loud and she'd hear me. She stood there a long moment, then walked away. A door closed. An engine started. Sound faded down the street. I stayed still for 5 long minutes. When I finally rose, my legs shook. I hugged the folder tight. Outside the attic window, the sky had gone dark. By dusk, I reached home. Margaret was waiting on my porch. Eleanor, where on earth have you been? I was worried sick. I handed her the file, voice unsteady. I found Sophie's birth certificate. It's not Vanessa. It's Lydia Torres. Vanessa posed as the mother. Margaret's mouth fell open. Oh my God. Lydia Torres? I've heard that name. Didn't she go missing years back? I nodded. And Vanessa worked at the same hospital. Margaret gripped my hand. Eleanor, this isn't just murder anymore. This is kidnapping. I spread the documents on my table. Under the lamp, the ink almost glowed. I saw Ryan in every line. The boy who believed her, who thought she was just tired. Now I understood. She wasn't tired. She was busy building a brand new life. I picked up my phone and messaged the only person I dared trust, Detective Hayes. I have new evidence. Can't explain over the phone. Meet me tomorrow, 8 a.m., Red Elm Cafe. I hit send and powered the phone off. I knew I had crossed the line, from grieving mother to witness in a criminal case. That night I sat by the window, looking toward Vanessa's house. Sophie's bedroom light was still on. Her tiny shadow moved across the curtain. Whoever you are, I whispered, I will protect you. Night wind slid through the pines, carrying cold and the smell of rain. I wasn't afraid anymore. The truth had just opened its first door. I arrived at Red Elm Cafe before 8. The air outside smelled of roasted beans and early rain. I chose the table by the window, my back to the glass, a habit that comes from being watched too long. Detective Hayes showed up 10 minutes later. Long coat, calm face, eyes that listened more than they spoke. You said you had something new, Eleanor? I placed the envelope on the table, no preamble, just slid it toward him. He opened it, flipping through the papers slowly. His eyes stopped at Sophie's birth certificate. Lydia Torres, he read aloud, his tone tightening. That name rings a bell. There was a missing person file, 2019. I clenched my hands, and Vanessa used to work with her at the hospital. He looked up. I think it's time we call the man in those photos by his real name. Carter. That name echoed in my head all day. Carter. I reopened Vanessa's hidden phone, scrolled through the gallery. There he was in several shots. Low light, close distance, familiar enough to haunt me. I printed the photos and took them to Margaret. She gasped the moment she saw one. I know him. He was a medical tech, got fired for losing patient files. Which hospital? I asked. Portland Mercy, and rumor was he lived with a nurse once, a woman named Lydia. The blood drained from my body. That afternoon, I drove to Portland Mercy Hospital. 3 hours through mountain rain. I told no one. I needed to see for myself. The old records office was on the 3rd floor. A young clerk printed me the last listed address. Don't tell anyone I gave you this, he whispered. I nodded, folded the paper, and left. The address led to the northern edge of Bend, a derelict trailer home, windows cracked, weeds knee-high. I pushed the door open. The smell of mold, old clothes, and medicine hit me. On a shelf, a picture frame lay face down. I turned it over. Lydia Torres, brown eyes, holding a newborn. Sophie. On the back, scribbled in shaky ink, if I disappear, find him, -L, double quote. I sat down, heart pounding hard enough to hurt. Carter had been here. Carter had known everything. I brought the photo to Hayes. He frowned. I'll check their financials. If Carter's still around, money will leave a trail. 2 days later, he called back, voice tight. Eleanor, you'd better hear this. Vanessa transferred $200,000 to Carter. 1 week after she received the $500,000 insurance payout from Ryan's death. My hands gripped the chair. Transferred. Clear as day. Seattle account. It all snapped into place. They had killed together. They had split the money. They had covered it up. That evening, Margaret came by with an envelope. More bank statements. Rows of transactions. And there it was, printed bold. $200,000. Payment, Carter M. Vanessa had claimed she was broke, that she struggled to raise Sophie. But paper doesn't lie. Her lies were knives, and now I had the blade by the handle. The surveillance began. I logged the hours her car left, the hours she returned, which nights she worked and which nights were blank. Every time she didn't appear on a hospital shift, Carter's truck did. One night, I followed him. Black pickup, muddy plates. He turned down the road to Mirror Pond. I parked far back, engine off. He waited in the dark. Minutes later, another car pulled up. Vanessa stepped out. They embraced. They kissed. They laughed. I recorded it all. My hands trembled, but the camera stayed steady. The first undeniable proof. When they drove away, I sat, motionless. The lake wind was sharp as glass. I felt 10 years older before sunrise. The next morning, Vanessa called. "Mom, someone said they saw you at Mirror Pond last night." Her voice, calm, casual, deadly. "I like the view," I said. She chuckled softly. "I hope that's all it was." She knew. She was warning me. Politely, elegantly, and with poison. That night, I installed a small camera inside a flower pot on my porch. If they came for me, I'd have evidence. If they burned my house, the truth would survive. The next day, a white envelope lay on my doorstep. No name, no return address. Inside, a note printed in block letters. "Stop digging, or you'll end up like him." My fingers went numb. They knew I had proof. They were getting desperate. One evening, I returned home to find fresh mud tracks across my porch. Large ones, size 11 boots. I snapped a photo and sent it to Hayes. He texted back immediately. "Carter wears size 11. We're on our way." That night, footsteps scraped outside my door. A shadow crossed the window. By the time I opened it, only footprints remained. Long, deep, deliberate. A threat in the shape of a shoe. Hayes told me later he'd filed for a warrant. Good sign. But I knew what that meant. When the truth draws near, the guilty will try to kill it. That night, I opened the USB again, the final video. Vanessa and Carter, whispering. "Vanessa, you cleaned everything, right? They'll believe it was an accident." "Carter, it's done. But if it ever comes out, Vanessa, then I'll smile." Who would believe an old woman over me? The video cut off. My heart nearly stopped. I sent a copy to Hayes. He replied within minutes. "Eleanor, we have enough to request a search warrant. Stay quiet. Don't tell anyone." "Not even Margaret?" I asked. "Not even her," he said. When the truth gets this close, silence becomes armor. But silence is heavy. That night, I stood by the window. Vanessa's house glowed across the street. Sophie's laughter drifted faintly. Vanessa stood in the frame, wineglass in hand. She turned, caught my eye, and smiled. Thin, sharp, knowing. "The name Carter," I whispered, "finally has a face." And I knew the road ahead was long, but the pieces, the money, the records, the videos were aligning. Justice was coming, slow, certain, in rhythm with my heartbeat. Rain drizzled over Bend that morning. Not heavy, just steady, like the sky was holding back words it wasn't ready to say. I sat at my kitchen table, hands around a cup of cold tea, eyes fixed on the window. The yard was slick with puddles. The mud tracks from the night Carter stood there were still faintly visible. Then came the knock. 3 slow, deliberate taps. I knew immediately. Detective Hayes. He stood on the porch, hat dripping, coat soaked. When I opened the door, he offered a faint smile. "You're not easy to scare, Eleanor." I like that. I just nodded and stepped aside. The smell of rain followed him in, mingling with peppermint tea. He took a seat, opened his briefcase, and laid a folder on the table. "We traced the money trail," he said. "Carter and Vanessa shared an account in Seattle. They've been withdrawing steadily over 2 years. How much? More than 300,000. All from Ryan's insurance. I inhaled sharply. And now? He looked at me, the kind of look that weighed the truth before speaking it. Now, he said quietly, we have grounds to reopen the accident case. And maybe more than that. He pulled out another thin file. Across the top, Patient Incident Report, Portland Mercy Hospital. Vanessa was head nurse. 3 elderly patients died suddenly within 1 month. All in the same ward? I asked. The same shift, he said. A chill crept up my spine. Cause of death? Cardiac arrest, but there's a pattern. Each had a life insurance policy, and the beneficiary was Vanessa Stone. The air in the room grew heavy. I gripped my cup until my fingers went white. Oh, God. Hayes nodded grimly. I think we're looking at a serial killer. He flipped open his laptop, showing photos from Ryan's original scene. We re-examined the injury pattern. The angle doesn't match a fall. The force came from behind. Someone pushed him. Exactly. Tears welled, but none fell. I'd known it all along, but hearing it said aloud cracked something inside me. We'll be filing for a search warrant, he said, but you must stay silent. If Vanessa suspects, she'll destroy everything. I understand, I whispered. I've lived next to the devil for 3 years, Detective Hayes. After he left, I sat in the dim kitchen. The rain grew louder. I opened the drawer and pulled out the mint green blanket. My fingers brushed its soft threads, as if touching Ryan's soul. Do you see, Ryan? I whispered. The truth is finally surfacing. That afternoon, I ran to the market for a few things. When I returned, a black car was parked down the street. No plates I recognized, tinted windows. I stood watching. No one got out. I went inside, heart thudding. The porch camera was still running. I checked the playback. The car had been there since 9 a.m., all day, not moving. I called Hayes. Someone's watching me. Stay calm, he said. Don't go outside. I'm sending units. 15 minutes later, 2 patrol cars pulled up. The black sedan roared to life and vanished into the rain. Hayes came in, soaked again, his voice taut. Carter. The plates match one of his old Portland vehicles. What does he want? Maybe just to scare you. Maybe to see if you've handed over the evidence. I stared out the window, rain hammering down. Do you think he's still nearby? Men like him don't leave, Hayes said. Not until they finish what they started. That night, he stayed with me. We sat in the living room, the only light from a small lamp. He drank coffee. I clutched the mint blanket like armor. Detective, I said softly. What if I'm wrong? You're not. But what if I can't stop them? You've already done more than anyone else could. I looked at him, calm, steady, the kind of man who'd seen monsters and still believed in law. I just want Ryan to rest, I said, and Sophie to grow up knowing the truth. And she will, he promised. But we do this the right way. 2 days later, the warrant came through. At 6 a.m., officers surrounded Vanessa's house. She opened the door. Silk robe, messy hair, feigned confusion. What's going on? Police search, ma'am, related to the death of Ryan Stone. She smiled, sharp, tired. Still calling it an accident, are we? But I saw it, the tremor in her hand as they stepped inside. An hour later, Hayes called. His voice was low, tight. Eleanor, you'd better come here. I drove through the storm, pulse pounding. When I arrived, police tape crisscrossed the bedroom. Hayes met me at the door, motioning toward the evidence bag. We found this behind a false panel in her closet. Inside the plastic, a small glass vial of clear liquid. Label, midazolam. I knew instantly. A strong sedative, just enough to stop a healthy heart. We also found traces of it in Ryan's hair sample, Hayes said quietly. Oh my God. The world blurred. I gripped the wall to stay upright. Vanessa was led out in cuffs, still smiling. Happy now, Mom? She said, voice dripping with venom. I met her eyes. I'm not happy. I'm just sorry Ryan believed you. Right up to his last breath. She laughed, cruel and echoing. Belief, she said, is the deadliest mistake. As the squad car pulled away, Hayes rested a hand on my shoulder. Carter's still missing, but we have enough to indict. I nodded. The rain hadn't stopped, but for the first time, it didn't feel cold. It smelled like something cleansing, something washing the world back to truth. That evening, I sat at my table. The case files, Lydia's photo, Sophie's birth certificate. I lit a single candle and placed them side by side. 3 lives, 3 women, each scarred, each paying a different price. The wind kicked through the open window, snuffing the flame. I looked up. Headlight swept across the street. A dark shape moved past the glass. Carter. He hadn't left Bend. I woke at 3 in the morning. Not from a nightmare, from a smell. Smoke. At first it was faint, the kind of damp, buried burn of old wood. Something smoldering quietly. Then came a soft pop from downstairs. I was out of bed in seconds, opened my door. Smoke rolled down the hallway, thick and low, crawling along the floor like a living thing. I ran toward the stairs. Firelight flickered below. Orange, wild, hungry. The flames licked up the wall like red tongues. "Sophie!" I shouted. "Sophie, run!" No answer. I rushed to her room. The door was locked. I pounded until the hinges screamed and gave way. Sophie was standing by the window, coughing, eyes streaming. "Grandma! Someone's outside," she cried. I looked. She was right. Through the smoke and rain, a figure stood beyond the fence, unmoving, black against the glow of fire. The rain glistened off his coat. Carter. He didn't run, didn't flinch, just watched. My heart clenched. "Grandma, the fire!" Sophie coughed. Flames climbed higher. I grabbed her, ran to the window, looked down. 6 feet to the ground, wet earth, scattered stones. No choice. I wrapped her in the mint green blanket, whispering, "Hold tight to me. Don't let go." Then we jumped. We hit the ground hard. Pain shot through my shoulder. But we were alive. I pulled Sophie up. "Run!" We stumbled into the rain-soaked yard. Behind us, the kitchen erupted. Windows shattering, beams collapsing. The sky turned red. When I looked back, Carter was gone. Only fire and smoke remained. The fire trucks came 10 minutes later. Neighbors poured out in their robes, faces pale in the flashing lights. Margaret rushed over, wrapping me in a blanket. "Eleanor, dear God, are you hurt?" I just shook my head and held Sophie tighter. She was trembling, lips blue but alive. Then Hayes arrived, hair wet, shirt half-buttoned, eyes wide with fury. He pulled me aside. "We checked the porch. There's gasoline residue. Someone set this, Eleanor." "Who?" "A man, based on the footprints." "Carter," I said. He nodded grimly. He wanted to erase everything, or finish the job. I turned toward what used to be my house. The roof had collapsed. The walls were gone. Rain hissed against the flames, turning memories into steam. Ryan's photos, his books, the mint blanket, everything. Gone. "I don't think he'll stop," I whispered. "No," Hayes said quietly. "But men with nothing left to lose are the most dangerous." They moved Sophie and me into a safe house, a small windowless room at the Bend precinct. Neon lights hummed overhead. Sophie fell asleep on my shoulder, exhausted. Hayes sat across from me, a file in his hands. "We've issued a statewide alert for Carter." "But he knows these woods. He's probably still nearby." "He knows I'm the witness," I said, "and he knows you're not afraid anymore," Hayes replied. He hesitated, then added softly, Eleanor, you might have to leave Ben for a while. I looked down at Sophie's sleeping face. No, I said. He took my son, my home. He won't take anything else. 2 days later, the case hit every Oregon news station. Bend house fire under investigation. Arson linked to murder case. Our pictures flashed on screen, mine and Sophie's. People whispered, speculated, turned the tragedy into headlines. But I saw only one thing. The fire had burned away the last of the lies. On the third night at the safe house, a metallic sound woke me. Metal scraping metal. I opened my eyes. The window latch was moving. A shadow slipped inside. Carter Gaunt. Eyes cold and flat as glass. I didn't scream. I just stood, every muscle locked. You burned my home, Carter. What else do you want? I came for what's mine, he rasped. There's nothing of yours left here. The girl, he said. She's Lydia's, and I'm her father. The air froze. You're lying, I whispered. No, I have proof. DNA test. Lydia was pregnant with my child. Vanessa took the baby and killed her. The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. If that's true, I said, voice shaking, why did you kill Lydia? His jaw tightened. I didn't. Vanessa did. I was too late. Before I could answer, sirens wailed outside. Red light flooded the window. Carter turned toward it. Hayes! I shouted. He's here! Carter dove through the window and vanished into the rain. Hayes and 2 officers burst in seconds later. You okay? He was here, I gasped. He said Sophie's his daughter, his and Lydia's. Hayes paused, eyes dark. It might be true. We're still waiting on DNA from Vanessa's house, but it doesn't change this. He's still an accomplice, and he just tried to kill you. The next morning, news came in. A cabin fire in the Deschutes forest. Inside, 1 body, size 11 boots, passport under the name Carter Mills. Hayes called me to the station. They found a USB in his truck, contained video recordings. Vanessa, confessing to everything. I exhaled slowly. It was over. And Sophie? I asked. She's safe, he said. Protected, officially listed as a key witness. Later that day, I returned to the ruins of my home. The fire had died. The smoke had thinned. Charred earth, blackened beams, silence. I knelt, brushing through the ashes, and there, half burned, a scrap of fabric. Mint green. Sophie's blanket. I held it close, tears mixing with the rain. Not for loss, for closure. Rest now, Ryan, I whispered. It's done. 2 weeks later, Vanessa stood trial. First-degree murder, insurance fraud, conspiracy to commit homicide. The media called her the Angel of Death from Bend. Carter's death in the cabin was confirmed. The case was closed. But the smoke of it lingered in me, the way ash clings to skin. On our last night in the safe house, I took Sophie outside to see the moon. The sky was clear again. She held my hand. Grandma, she asked softly, can we go home now? I smiled, brushing her hair from her eyes. We'll build a new one, somewhere with no smoke, no shadows. And Mrs. Margaret's apple pie? Yes, I said, laughing through tears. Always that. She giggled, pure and bright, like water running after the storm. The Deschutes County Courthouse was packed to the walls. I sat in the second row, gripping the half-burned mint green blanket in my hands. Sophie leaned against my shoulder, small and quiet. Across the room sat Vanessa, orange jumpsuit, hair pulled back, a faint, polite smile still painted on her lips. No one looking at her could have guessed that behind that calm mask was a woman who had murdered her husband, stolen another woman's child, and set her own house ablaze. But today the truth would speak for itself. Adrian, the prosecutor, rose first. His voice cut through the murmurs like steel. Your Honor, this case is a portrait of manipulation, deception, and cruelty. The defendant, Vanessa Stone, not only killed her husband, Ryan Stone, but conspired with Carter Mills, now deceased, to steal a newborn from her mother, Lydia Torres. After collecting a $500,000 insurance payout, she transferred $200,000 to Carter Mills, clear financial evidence of conspiracy and cover-up. And every bit of it is captured on a USB drive recovered from the burned cabin. The courtroom rippled with gasps. Vanessa only smiled, serene as ever, as if the entire proceeding were theater and she the lead actress. Adrian inserted the USB. The lights dimmed. A cold glow spread across the wall. On the screen, Vanessa, sitting in a living room chair. Carter held the camera. Low light, one lamp. Vanessa's voice, almost casual. You know, sometimes I think Ryan deserved it. He trusted too easily. His mother, me, that was his flaw. He thought everyone had a heart. Carter. And Lydia? Vanessa. Lydia was weak. She didn't deserve that baby. I gave the child a better life, a name, a home, and I got the insurance money. Carter. What if someone finds out? Vanessa. Then I'll smile. Who's going to believe an old grieving woman over me? A devoted nurse. When the clip ended, the room fell dead silent. No one even breathed. Judge Monroe himself froze for a beat before looking down at his notes. Adrian turned toward the bench. Your Honor, this is the defendant's own voice, clear, voluntary, unedited. He paused the frame at Vanessa's face, half in light, half in shadow. Her mouth curved into that thin, blade-like smile. The defense attorney stood, sputtering about psychological imbalance, about coercion by Carter. But no one was listening anymore. The evidence was too strong, too real. Even the reporters had stopped typing. For the first time, I saw Vanessa's composure crack. Her fingers trembled against the table. Her eyes darted, searching for an exit that no longer existed. When the witnesses were called, Hayes stepped up. His voice was steady, low. I've served 27 years in law enforcement. I've never seen anyone smile at her husband's funeral the way she did. It wasn't grief. It was satisfaction. He nodded toward the screen, still frozen on her image. And I'll tell you this. People like Eleanor Stone remind us why justice still matters. They refuse to be silenced by lies. Every head turned toward me. I stood. The judge allowed me to speak. I walked to the front, holding the singed blanket. I'm not here for revenge, I said. I'm here for Ryan, because he deserves to rest in truth. And for Sophie, the child who never knew who her real mother was. I looked directly at Vanessa. You smiled in that video. You thought no one would speak. But I'm here now, and I'm speaking for everyone you silenced. The courtroom was utterly still. Only the rain outside tapped against the glass. Adrian nodded once, then turned back to the bench. Your Honor, with digital evidence, eyewitness testimony, financial records, and forensic proof, the state requests the maximum sentence, life imprisonment without parole. Judge Monroe's gaze was ice. Mrs. Stone, do you have anything to say before sentencing? Vanessa tilted her head, lips curling slightly. Everyone lies, she said softly. I just lied better. Her words slithered through the courtroom, hollow, cold, final. The court sentences the defendant, Vanessa Stone, to life imprisonment, 6 counts of murder, 1 count of kidnapping, one count of document forgery. The gavel struck, a single echoing crack. It was over. As they let her out, she glanced back once. Her eyes were empty. No hate, no fear, just emptiness. I didn't look away. She passed out of sight like the last gust of a storm finally dying down. Afterward, Hayes handed me a small envelope. "We found this in Carter's safe," he said. Inside was another USB, labeled "For the Truth." I played it at home. A short video, 12 seconds. Carter faced the camera, voice weak, coughing. "I never meant to kill anyone," he said. "I loved Lydia. But I was weak, and Vanessa was stronger than I thought. If someone finds this, tell Sophie she was born from love, not from our sins." I closed the laptop, sat in silence. The tears came. Not forgiveness, not sorrow, just release. I held the mint green blanket, the only thing that survived the fire. Its corner was singed, but it still smelled faintly of baby shampoo and old detergent. Days later, the newspapers ran a headline above our photo. "The woman who refused to forget." When they asked how I felt, I told them, "Justice is never late. It just waits for someone stubborn enough to stay." That evening, Sophie sat at the kitchen table coloring. She drew 2 blankets, one burnt, one brand new. "This one's yours," she said, pointing to the torn one. "And this one's mine." "Why 2?" I asked. "Because you kept me safe," she said, "the same way you kept this one." I smiled through the tears. For the first time in years, they felt warm. I thought that after the trial, silence would finally mean peace. But silence isn't peace. It's just the noise moving inside your head. Every morning, I still brewed tea and sat by the window, watching the mist settle over Bend. But the house was gone. Ryan's laughter was gone. Only Sophie remained, and the thin trembling light filtering through the curtains. She was learning how to sleep again, and I was learning how to live with the truth. 3 weeks later, Hayes called. "Eleanor, do you have a moment? I need you to come in." His voice was low, heavy, something unsaid in it. I drove through a thin layer of snow. When I arrived, he was waiting with a thick envelope. "We just finished processing the remainder of Vanessa's property. What could possibly be left?" "Not left," he said. "Hidden." He laid a photo on the table, the wall of Vanessa's office, partly broken open. Behind the bricks was a small built-in safe. We found it behind a mirror beside her desk. She didn't want anyone to know it was there. "What was inside?" I asked. Hayes opened the envelope, wrinkled documents, a small silver USB. Bank records, a voice recording, and one document titled Clause 9. "You should hear this." We stepped into a quiet briefing room. Hayes plugged in the USB. Static first, then a voice. "Ryan's. If someone's hearing this, I'm gone. I don't know what Vanessa's hiding, but I discovered something strange in the insurance policy. Clause 9. It doubles the payout if death is ruled an accident at home. I don't believe in coincidence. If anything happens to me, find the notary who signed it." My fingers clenched, my throat closed. Ryan knew. My son had known what was coming. Hayes went on. "We confirmed the contract was forged. Carter reprinted the document and added Clause 9. Vanessa signed and filed it. Together they claimed an extra $250,000 after the accident." I closed my eyes. It wasn't rage or jealousy, it was greed. Every number on that paper was soaked in blood. "And Lydia?" I asked. Hayes handed me another file. Lydia Torres's autopsy. We found a deleted copy of her record. Cause of death, midazolam injection, the same drug we found in Vanessa's house. The final pieces locked together, the same pattern, the same hand, the same quiet evil. I sat in silence for a long time, then whispered, "Can I keep the USB?" Hayes nodded. Consider it Ryan's keepsake. I reached for it, trembling. It felt like holding his heart, preserved in a few ounces of metal. That night, I took it home, plugged it in. There was one more video inside. Filed laminate for Mom. I pressed play. Ryan sat in front of his camera. Gray sweater, soft lamplight. He looked tired, but he smiled gently. Mom, if you're watching this, I guess I didn't make it. Please don't cry. I never feared Vanessa. I only regret not trusting your instincts sooner. You were right. You always are. If you can, tell Sophie she was my last miracle. I bowed my head over the desk, sobbing without sound. The tears came, but it felt like the grief was flowing backward, back into my chest where it had always lived. The next morning, I drove to the cemetery. Bend was dusted with white. Ryan's headstone stood quiet under the pines. I placed the USB on the snow, beside a small square of mint green fabric, what was left of the blanket. You did your part, Ryan, I whispered. Now it's mine. The air was sharp but kind. Sophie stood beside me, her mittened hand tugging at my coat. Grandma, she said softly, I dreamed of Dad. He said it's not going to rain anymore. I hugged her close. No, sweetheart, it won't. From now on, the sky will stay bright. That afternoon, Hayes brought the final sentencing documents. Vanessa didn't appeal, he said. Life without parole. Justice had signed its last page, but Hayes looked unsettled. Eleanor, he said quietly, do you know what haunts me most? What? She labeled that safe vault, too, in case of failure. The words chilled me. You mean there's another one? Possibly. Another vault. Could be more records, maybe another confession. If there is, she hid it somewhere that felt safe to her. My mind went straight to Ryan's old house, the attic, the wall where I'd once found Sophie's birth papers. The place was sealed now, but the walls still stood. A week later, I requested permission to revisit the property. Hayes came along. We entered near sunset. The air was heavy, smelling of damp wood and ash. Upstairs, I ran my hand along the old wall where Ryan's wedding photo used to hang. Light from the cracked window hit one corner, and there it was, a slightly raised patch of brick. I tapped it. A hollow sound. Hayes met my eyes. Together, we pulled the bricks free. Inside, a small black safe, sealed with silver tape. Across the front, written in neat block letters, Vault 2. Hayes cracked it open. Inside lay a single item, a brown leather notebook. I opened it. The handwriting was Vanessa's, slanted, sharp, cold. Ryan discovered Clause 9. He wouldn't stop asking. I only did what I had to do to keep my life intact. The next page listed names, dates, dollar amounts, a ledger of death. 3 patients, Lydia, Ryan, and below them a final scrawl in different ink. If you're reading this, I've failed. But remember, no one is truly innocent, not even the ones who see everything. I closed the book, looked at Hayes. Is that enough? I asked quietly. He nodded, voice rough. More than enough. But we've both seen too much. We need rest. That night, I sat in my car, watching the sun dip behind the trees. The sky over Bend glowed gold, soft, tender, almost forgiving. For a moment, I felt Ryan beside me. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. I whispered, You did well, Ryan. You can rest now. Podcast Love. The first spring after the trial brought sunlight back to Bend. A warm, gentle kind of light. The kind that makes even the sky seem ready to begin again. My new house sat on the edge of town. Small white walls, cedar roof, a lavender garden behind it. Not large, but peaceful. I chose it because of its east-facing window, where every morning I could see the sun rise without anything in the way. Sophie ran through the yard, clutching the old mint-green blanket, the one singed at the corner. I'd meant to put it away, but she told me, "Grandma, I want to keep it. It's my blanket." I smiled. "And I have mine now." I pointed to the new one, paler green, softer, the one I'd knitted all winter. In the corner, I had stitched 2 initials, S and R. Sophie, Ryan. Some nights I sat on the porch, listening to the wind whisper through the pines while Sophie slept. I could still remember the rhythm of the day Ryan was born, his heartbeat against mine, that first small cry. I once thought those memories had burned away with the house, but they hadn't. They'd only been sleeping, and now they were awake again. Hayes still visited from time to time. He brought the final case files, neat and sealed. One afternoon, he laid them on the table. "Eleanor," he said, "the case of Vanessa Stone is now officially closed. All seized assets are being transferred into a fund for medical abuse victims." I nodded. Ryan would be happy to know that. He looked around the quiet little house and smiled. "Peaceful place you've got here." "After every storm," I said. "The air always feels clean again." That night, I opened a wooden box, the one holding what was left of my old life. Ryan's USB, Lydia's photograph, 2 pieces of fabric, one burnt, one new. I placed them side by side. Between them, I laid a handwritten note from Ryan. "Truth can hurt, but only when we face it do we become free." I read it over and over. In the silence, it felt like a lullaby. Months later, I received a letter from the Brooks Foundation, the same fund Hayes had proposed. They were opening the first medical victims recovery center in Oregon. At the ceremony, I found a small therapy room on the 2nd floor. A brass plaque by the door read, "Ryan's Room, for healing and truth." The smell of fresh paint and lavender filled the hall. A young nurse smiled at me. "Mrs. Stone, we'll be sharing your son's story with our students, as a lesson." "Tell it," I said gently, "with compassion, not fear." That evening, back home, Sophie sat on the porch bench staring at the stars. "Grandma," she said softly, "I see 2 bright ones." I named them Ryan and Lydia. I smiled. "I think they're looking down at you, too." She pulled the new blanket over my shoulders, then wrapped herself in the old one. 2 blankets, one old, one new, swayed side by side in the night breeze. And I realized, not every burn mark is ugly. Some things have to go through fire to be reborn. I began writing this story down, not as an accusation, but as a journal. On each page, I wrote a name. Ryan. Lydia. Hayes Margaret. On the last page, I wrote Sophie, and beneath it, "The truth doesn't burn. It only reveals." One summer morning, Sophie and I visited Mirror Pond. The water was calm, so clear that the clouds seemed to float beneath our feet. She released 2 violet petals onto the surface. "One for Dad, one for Mom," she said. I rested my hand on her shoulder. The petals drifted away. The breeze was soft, and I knew every soul finds its way home. Eventually. Back at the house, I hung the 2 blankets side by side on the porch rail. One burned, one whole. Sunlight streamed through them, blending their greens into one gentle hue, like 2 chapters of the same story finally meeting. I sat down, tea in hand, listening to Sophie's laughter spill out from the kitchen. That sound, light, alive, was something I thought I'd lost forever. Faith. The mountain wind carried the scent of lavender and the chime of glass bells. I looked up at the 2 blankets fluttering softly. One belonged to the past, one to the future. And I belonged in between, the keeper of the story. If you're hearing this now, remember, Justice doesn't always come from a gavel. Sometimes, it comes from the courage to face the truth. If this story touched your heart, tell me where you're watching from. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that those still living in the shadows of lies can remember that the light is always there, as long as we're brave enough to step into it. If this story moved you, leave a comment with where you're listening from and subscribe for more stories of truth, healing, and second chances.